Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. As you can see, I'm driving around the GTR today. Pretty much what happened is my wife needed me to make deliveries. She owns a bakery, so I'm out delivering cake in the GTR and figured I'd bring you with me and have a little discussion about something that kind of struck me this week. And that was, I was spending some time in the Facebook for sale area, Facebook market, and I saw some listings for some Mark IV Supras, and they were all over $100,000. And then I saw another one that was over $200,000. And I had to stop and think, is the car really worth that much? Now, to start off, for those of you that are new to the channel, you might not know I've actually had a Mark IV Supra as well. Actually, I've had two of them. If you go back to some of my older videos, I actually started this channel with the Mark IV Supra, and both my Supras have been turbo 6-speeds. So I had one back in 2007 to about 2011. And I absolutely loved that car. I had it, I built it to almost exactly where I wanted it. And then I ended up switching careers. I got rid of it because I was moving from working in restaurants to working in Hollywood. And I was a PA at the time. And so they're constantly having me go pick up stuff and carry it to set or various other things. So I needed a car that wouldn't get as abused. And I felt guilty using the Supra to haul this stuff because it was kind of damaging the Supra. I was putting a lot of miles on the car where I was easily doing, sometimes like 500, 600 miles in a week. And I just didn't want to do that to the Supra. So I got rid of it and I got like a 2010 Camaro because they'd just come out. And I'll tell you, that was just a very boring car. I did not like that Camaro. But the issue I always had was I always regretted selling the Supra, and every car I had since then, I always compared to the Supra and it could never compare. So I had the 2010 Camaro, which was just numb and boring to drive. And then after that, I had an FD RX-7, which I did really like that car. That was a great car, but it just didn't have like the raw power that the Mark IV Supra has. So I ended up getting rid of that, and I got an R32 Skyline GTR because they had just hit the 25-year exemption rule, and I'm like, hey, Skyline, awesome. And there again, the R32 just couldn't compare to my Mark IV Supra. So I got rid of the R32 and I ended up getting another Mark IV Supra. And that one I did build to where I wanted. I had a single turbo, I had standalone fuel management. I built the Supra the way I wanted it, and it was great. So you might be wondering then why I'm driving an R35 GTR if I had a Mark IV Supra and I loved it. And as part of what I want to discuss in this video is it became a question of, nowadays, is the Supra really worth it? To start off this discussion, let's first talk about what it is you're getting from a Mark IV Supra. And of course, the first thing you're gonna think about is just the potential for mass amounts of power. I mean, the car is absolutely darn near bulletproof, especially if you have the 6-speed transmission, the Getrag. And of course, all of them came with the famous 2JZ. But as some people don't realize, there's actually two versions of the 2JZ. There's the 2JZ GE, which is the non-turbo edition, which is very easy to spot because the intake manifold actually goes over the top of the engine. And then you have the 2JZ GTE, which is the turbo edition, very easy to spot because it's got the twin turbos and the intake manifold sits off to the side. So there's, those of you who don't know, there is actually two different 2JZs. And all Mark IVs do come with a 2JZ. Now, the cool thing about this engine is it's so easy to modify. I mean, with just simple bolt-ons, you can get this car up to 500 horsepower and reliably. I mean, you don't have to switch out the turbos or even the injectors. Just simple intake, and you can do injectors, fuel pump, and maybe some sort of tuning software, and yeah, you're up to 500 horsepower like that. So the mass amount of power there is very easy to unlock. And then of course, if you want to go farther like I did, you go with a big single turbo, really the sky is the limit. Now, I have heard of people that are putting down about 700 to 750 horsepower on stock internals. I mean, that's really impressive for an engine that was designed back in the late 80s, early 90s before it was put into production. So this engine is very, very reliable. Now, that being said, the engine is kind of getting up there in age. So you are going to have to take care of some things. One of the most major things that typically goes wrong with the 2JZ is the valve stem seals go bad. And it's not really that big of a deal. The only thing that happens is when you start up the engine or you leave a stop sign, you get a little puff of blue smoke out the tailpipe because the valve stem seals have gone bad, and a little bit of oil drips into the cylinders. So you do have to think about that. It's like, okay, I have this engine that can do stupid amounts of power, but it's also not a new engine. So if you are thinking about picking up a Supra, you're probably going to be looking at a rebuild at some point, or at least a refresh of the engine before you even want to think about putting down those numbers. Now, of course, I'm talking about stock block there. You want to start, doing your pistons, your rods, your crank. It's not uncommon to see these cars putting down 1,400 horsepower or more. And they've been able to do that for a long time. There's set recipes, there's set builds. So you're not really exploring the limits of the platform. You know what the limits of the platform are. You can operate within those limits, and you're more safe in how you do it. So yes, you do get a great engine for the car that you're buying. Then of course you get, with this engine, you get the Getrag 6-speed transmission, and these things I think are darn near indestructible. A lot of these people that are running the 1,400 horsepower are still running the stock Getrag 6-speed transmission. I mean, these suckers are just beefy. They're meant to handle the power. But there is a downside to these Getrag transmissions as well, and that is they've been out of production for so long that if you do have an issue with a synchro or a gear, you almost have to toss the transmission because you can't find parts for this transmission. I mean, yeah, you might be able to find somebody back in like Germany that might have a gear sitting around their desk, but they're going to be charging an arm and a leg for it. So you have to worry, if you damage this transmission, are you going to have to do some sort of swap out like people are using? I believe it's the C009 transmission, and you have to modify the bell housing, and your speedometer doesn't work. You have to use a GPS based one. So then all of a sudden you're looking at, well, you're getting rid of some of the originality of the car. So that's another thing to think about. Yes, when you buy this car, are you getting a really good transmission? In fact, probably one of the best transmissions to ever hit the road. Yes. But you might start running into issues that if you have to maintain this transmission, you might not be able to get parts for it, and you might have to do a transmission swap anyways. The next thing you're kind of getting when you pick up the Supra is what I call the bro factor. And that is when you pull up to a car show or even some gas stations, inevitably you get that, bro, is that a Supra? Now, before that video came out on YouTube, that was always kind of funny to me because, people are always wide-eyed and super excited to see the car. Now people say, is that a Supra? Because they think they're being funny because they think no one else has seen that video but them. But that aside, part of the value of the car is that when you pull into a car show or you pull into certain events, you're going to get the attention. People are going to stop looking at whatever Ferrari or Lamborghini, and they're going to come running to the Supra because the Supra has this mystique. Now, if you're buying the car for those attaboys and that attention, that's great, that's fine. I mean, if that's what draws you to the car, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you got to realize part of the tax that you're paying on the car is just that. It's the hype and the excitement behind the car. But is that hype and excitement really worth it? And that's something you have to decide when it comes to looking at the value of the car. One of the things that you're not getting, though, when you pick up a Supra is extremely notoriously good handling capabilities. I mean, the car does okay. I did enough canyon runs with either one to know that, yeah, it can corner and it does pretty well. But when you compare it to something like that FD RX-7, which just absolutely hooks up on a canyon road, the Supra's not really that type of car. The Supra is more of a straight stretch, drag strip kind of beast. Like, you just want to put down the massive power. It's more of like, I compare it to a modern day muscle car, because really the 2JZ kind of sounds beefy and the car's a little bit bigger and heavier, so it just feels like an old school muscle car. And if you've ever driven any of those muscle cars, yeah, they can put down some serious speed and some serious just raw power, but would you want to go around some serious corners in them? Probably not. Things like even like Hondas can walk away from you because they're built for twisties. So it is one thing that you don't get from the Supra is just, I mean, yeah, you can take it to a track. I did a track day with it up at Willow Springs and it did okay, but it's just not a great handling car compared to some other cars out on the road. So now that you know what you're getting with the car with this $100,000 to $200,000 price tag, the question comes down to, well, why is the car commanding this level of price in the for sale market? And there's actually a couple of reasons for this. One, of course, is the fame. And I'm sure anytime you hear Supra or even you see one, it flashes through your head of that famous bright orange Supra from the Fast and the Furious. Because for some of us, that was the first time we were even really exposed to the car. We go see this little movie that, you know, some people were talking about street racing, and it seemed like it was cool. And that orange Supra pops up on screen for the first time. It's like, oh, that car's cool. I need that. Not one, I need that. And it cemented the car in the minds of the US consumer as kind of like this end-all, be-all, import tuner, just king of the road car. And so now that some of us that, you know, like we're maybe 16 or 18 when we first saw the Fast and Furious, you know, we've grown up more, we've gone to college, we actually got decent jobs, and all of a sudden, you know, we remember, you know, oh, as a kid, I remember dreaming of having this Supra, and you're making the money now that you can actually do it. And so, you know, they're getting bought up at higher prices because those of us that were kids when it came out can afford those prices now because we put in the time and the effort and went to school and got the proper job. The other thing that also makes a car valuable and was another notoriety thing was about the same time that Fast and Furious came out, an article came out in Supra Street about two brothers down in Texas that were the first ones to get the Supra up over 1,000 horsepower with simple bolt-ons. So when you combine the fact that that happened at the same time as the movie, the car just kind of shot up to superstardom almost overnight because of those two things. So you're getting a car that's got the I want to be Paul Walker flavor, and you've got the car that has earned the reputation because it can put down such horsepower. Another thing that will make the car more valuable is actual production numbers. Now I'm going to ignore the right-hand drive overseas Supras because where here in the US we only got the car from 93 to 98. Overseas, they actually got the car from 93 all the way to 2002. So there's a lot more of them in the right-hand drive configuration, which is why they're not worth as much as the left-hand drive. There was not a lot of left-hand drive Supras made, and there was even less that were made with the turbo 6-speed. And of those that had the turbo 6-speed, there was even less that was the hardtop. That's why if you find a Supra that's a non-targa top turbo 6-speed, it's worth a lot of money. And then within even that, there are certain colors that were super rare that, in my opinion, are really desirable. Now, there's Imperial Jade Green Mica, which some people like, which is more valuable because they didn't make a lot of them. And of course, the most rare color, and the color that I personally like the most, is the RSP, or Royal Sapphire Pearl. It's this beautiful blue color, and it's almost impossible to find. And if you do, they're just stupid amounts of money. So at this point in time, instead of looking at the Supra as, am I spending $100,000 to $200,000 on a car, maybe it's time to start looking at the Supra as, am I spending $100,000 to $200,000 on a collectible? In which case, it stops really being a car and starts being more of a piece of art, you know, almost like a painting. One that, you know, you put in the garage and you look at, and, you know, it is still a car, so maybe you take it out and drive it on occasion. But for me, I have problems looking at cars like that. For me, a car is meant to be driven, it's meant to be experienced. So I'm going to kind of dial this talk back to strictly looking at the Supra of a, is it worth it from a car point of view? Now that you know what you're getting for your $100,000 to $200,000 and kind of why the car's going for that value, to answer the question, is the Supra worth the price that it's commanding? And I'm going to be honest with you, no. And this is coming from someone who loves the car. I've had two of them. But when I bought them, I got my first one for about $24,000 back in 2007. And I got my second one for about $30,000 back in 2017. And for me, those prices are worth it. You're spending, you know, 30s to 40s, sometimes even 60, I thought was even doable on this car. But now that they're up over 100,000, I just don't feel that you're getting the level of car that justifies that price tag. I mean, think about other cars that are in that price range that you can get that just give you so much more. For example, I mean, that's why I got the R35. I sat there, I drove an R35, and I just remember never being more impressed with a dead stock car in my life. Versus the Mark IV Supra, when it's completely stock, is a very boring car. But once you unlock that potential, that's when it becomes the beast. But you still have to do stuff to it. So imagine getting a car like this, which is so great in its stock configuration that I can't wait to start modifying it. I'm just waiting to see what happens with California emission laws before I do. But it's a much stronger platform. So I mean, it's easy for me to sell the Supra, pick up an R35, and even have money left over. And I feel I got a better car for the value. Now, there are going to be those of you out there like, well, you know, the Supra's only going to go up in value. And you know what? You're probably right. Although it's got to hit a ceiling at some point, because it's going to have to hit a point where some people go like, it's a Toyota and you want how much for it? But I don't buy cars as investments. I buy cars to drive. Now, yeah, if you're going to buy a Supra, put in a bubble, put it in a lobby of a hotel or some building and look at it and go, oh, it's only got 30,000 miles. Okay, cool. But there again, you're not buying a car, you're buying a piece of art. So there's so many other cars. I can get the R35 GTR for the same price as you buy a Supra. I mean, there's some Ferraris and Lamborghinis that you can buy at that price, especially in the used market, because the Supra is going to be bought used. You know, you could even start getting into some American muscle if you're into that, and that's very easy. You can pick up like some of those 69 Chargers, 69 Camaros, fastback Mustangs, and you're still paying less than you did for the Supra, and they're older cars, and you don't have to worry about all of the electronics. Or if you like the electronics, you get a newer car and you get more up-to-date electronics with way more going into it. So really, when you go out there and buy a Supra, you can tell yourself that, yeah, you're buying it because, oh, it has the potential to make all this power. You can say you bought it because, you know, there's just so much you can do with it. But let's be honest, at this point in time, you're buying a Supra just to say you own a Supra. You're buying the Supra, so when you pull into the car event, people are like, ooh, Supra. Because if you were buying the Supra for its potential strictly as a driver car, you would sit back and go, there's so many other cars out there for the money which can run circles around the Supra. And that's just sad, because to me the car was such a great car. I loved the car. It drove absolutely phenomenal for what I was doing with it. And yeah, I do get that certain feeling when I drive a Supra. It's just kind of like, this is my car. But there again, I was buying these cars for under $50,000. The fact now that they're going for over $200,000, it's priced me out to the point that it's like, not only am I priced out to the point that I will probably never buy a Supra again, it's priced me out to the point that even when I had a Supra, to me it was more worth it to get rid of it because I could buy a far superior performing car. And so there it is. That is my opinion as to whether or not the Supra is worth it. Now, you may agree with me and go, yeah, the Supra's overhyped, kind of like the R34 GTR. I'm sure we're gonna get flamed for that one. Or you might think like, no, the car's perfectly worth $200,000 because it's a Supra. And, you know, feel free to post in the comment section down below and let's have a discussion about it, because you may have a point of view that really might justify its value, and I will agree with you if you can come up with a good reason why this car is worth $200,000. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go hit that thumbs up button to let me know. It does help the channel out a lot. If you'd like to see more automotive, particularly GTR content in the future, go and subscribe to my channel. You can now follow me on all forms of social media, which include Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. I'll leave links to all those in the description down below. If you'd like to support the channel, I do have the JD Archer shop. If you go to jdarcher.bigcartel.com, you can see a limited selection of hats, t-shirts, and hoodies that I've designed that are for sale. If you have any questions or you feel there's anything I've missed in this video, and like I said, if you disagree with me completely and you have a good reason why, go and post in the comment section down below. I will respond to you. I thank you all for watching, and until next time, forget everything else, focus on the finish line.